So are economic headwinds challenging Europeans' green leadership? If we look at the World Economic Forum's risk report for this year, we see that climate change and its risks are top of the agenda for businesses, policymakers, NGOs, and the general public. So in the situation where the economic headwinds are strong, while actual risk remains really high, Europe is preparing its omnibus package to simplify some of its sustainability initiatives. What is currently being proposed is to harmonize the data required for multiple major sustainability reporting initiatives, such as the CSRD, the CSDDD, and the EU taxonomy. And while it obviously makes sense to simplify data and make sure that the burden and the cost associated with sustainability disclosure remains low, the actual problem or the discussion comes from a potential shift in reporting deadlines. So what is being discussed is to actually shift the reporting deadline and requirements by a year or sometimes even more, very short term, which means that those companies that have invested in building and preparing for this are faced with a lot of regulatory uncertainty. I think that in a world where Europe is losing competitive edge, we should double down on green technologies. It's one of the few areas where Europe is de facto leading with recent global shifts in priorities and policy. We also see that Europe will most likely remain the very strongest voice globally. And we can tie innovation and economic growth also to sustainability. This is what Europe has always been relatively successful at. So it's no surprise that many businesses are actually advocating against now a lot of regulatory uncertainty and short-term changes. And they're against sacrificing the long-term success and long-term resilience of both their operations, but also the continent, against some short-term impacts. So we see companies like Primark, Nestle, and Mars have been openly advocating to keep deadlines intact and to keep reporting because they have successfully prepared, have significantly invested in getting there in time, but also in that process build a more resilient foundation and a better view on their sustainability data to build new business models and actually make use of a first mover advantage. So the risk of shifting very short term is that companies might be penalized for doing their work early, for preparing well, while companies that have been lagging behind are basically getting a free second pass. There's another thing that we see happening, which is that caught in this vortex of shifting regulation and some uncertainty, we see that companies are increasingly also looking to complement their regulatory requirements with voluntary frameworks. So if we look at SBTi, the Science Based Target Initiative, or VCMI as voluntary climate and net zero target frameworks, we see that they're often used in addition to help move from mere reporting and just sharing data to actual climate action. Those frameworks can offer a more practical guide into what you can do on the way to net zero way ahead of time before the European Union has defined how to actually implement its own net zero target in 2050. It's interesting to note that those frameworks often go way beyond what regulation would require. By definition, they're actually requiring more action and more things, but they give you practical guidance on how to get there, and they allow you to compare how you're doing and to benchmark against other companies. That said, it comes at a cost, and this is something that's significant as we're facing a significant GDP gap. McKinsey is expecting it to be around 27% between the EU and the US. So how can we turn the additional cost in sustainability investment, the additional cost for net zero, and in a way also the additional cost for increased reporting into an economic advantage? There's three aspects that we see working with leading companies. The first is the shift from looking at reporting as only reporting to a real driver for innovation. Having a better data set, having a better view on what your business does, especially also across the supply chain, can help to really figure out how to gain competitive advantage, build a more resilient energy footprint, more resilient supplier networks, which is even more important as we see tolls and taxes being implemented across the globe. The second topic is implementation focus. We see leading companies not only reporting, but really starting to implement at the same time using voluntary frameworks that are out there and other standards that are already in place to complement their reporting with already actionable steps. That helps to find solutions ahead of time and to deliver on the metrics that you're reporting already now, while at the same time it helps you to improve a lot of the operations. For example, most sustainability initiatives go hand in hand with energy reduction, which obviously has a real cost effect in times of high energy prices. The last thing is adaptation. So companies that are taking action early, that are embracing also more transparency on their own business when it comes to climate and sustainability performance are much more likely to be able to shift to planetary boundary needs, but also to changing regulation. So staying nimble and being able to have a clear view on what's happening, but also measure how shifts in operation and shifts in your business are affecting your bottom line are even more important in a world that is a bit more complex and certainly more short-term right now. So as the European Union is considering an omnibus package, it is even more important to look at sustainability and a green advantage as a real driver for innovation and growth. Investment in R&D is one of the main gaps that we currently see between Europe and the US. And Europe has so far been the most successful, probably globally, in turning innovation and R&D in green technologies into a real economic advantage. There's another angle that as the US is maybe shifting back a bit from green technologies and green claims, there is a real gap in the world of who will develop the technologies that we will need to implement globally to reach net zero. Translating these things into a practical climate strategy can be difficult, and many companies are obviously have their hands full with CSRD reporting right now. One important aspect for almost all climate strategies is how to deal with beyond value chain. How can you mitigate and work with emissions that you cannot reduce? What's your angle in the long term? So at CEEZER, we're obviously supporting companies across their journey to understand what role can carbon removal play in this. How can you work with beyond value chain mitigation to accelerate your target achievement, or to make sure that you will hit your targets every year as you need to hit them with the most reliable, but at the same time cost-effective way. And while beyond value chain mitigation and carbon removal has not found its way into most of the reporting standards, there's a lot of things we already know, and there's a lot of knowledge that you can already use to take the right decision today, because it's not a short-term journey, it won't stop in a year, it's a 5 to 10 year plan, and you need to start executing now. So should you be interested, reach out to us. We're happy to help, and we're happy to meet you on your journey. Obviously, we're also excited to partner with leading and ambitious organization to make sure you achieve your climate targets faster.